we both care a lot about professions, and we've really enjoyed all the immersive quest lines in Legion, and we were curious, like, in your opinion, what were some of the lessons learned about the way the professions were handled in Warlords of Draenor and their interactions with the garrison and improvements made in Legion for professions?
Number one, obviously, I think what you're seeing is the interaction of the profession stuff integrating into the storylines that we're telling in the world, right? So for the garrison, everything was completely related around a building, leveling up that building, having individual reagents that worked with that building. The shipments were like a huge part of that. I think that worked really great for the garrison part of the content, but where that doesn't work really great is when you were outside of the garrison and doing other stuff. So there was a huge desire on the team to integrate the profession content into the world in a way that felt, number one, different, than anything we had done before, fresh, but also in a way that took advantage of other storylines, right? And so I think that's what you're seeing on the core storyline that kind of sends you down. It's like quest progression you would normally see, but the secondary part of that is the world quests, right? And hooking it into the world quest system, and that's been huge, because the world quest system is such a giant part of the end game for Legion. To be able to piggyback some of that content into there really pushes the profession progression out way further than I think it would have in a previous expansion, right? Because world quests just continue. They're very random. The idea is that you won't see the same thing many times over. So it gives us a chance to create more content that kind of will play out for a longer period of time.
Okay, on top of that, for elaborating on the whole Warlords, materials are very abundant. As I've seen in beta so far, Legion is total opposite almost. The materials seem very scarce.
Yes.
And that's the intention also on top of that for how is it going to affect players that for so long raiding players have double crafting.
Yep.
In the case of Blood of Targaryen, they were used to be BOE and Alpha, then they turned BOP. So people that have double crafting professions, the only way they're going to get it is through world quests and fishing, is my assumption.
Yeah, I think, the number one thing you're seeing is the idea that we're involving world quests in the entire system from the top down. And so world quests are a place that we have massive tuning to do on how often do they pop, how many rewards are available for them, and that has to be balanced against how often do you see the same one. Right, and that's a different thing that we haven't had to deal with professions before. Normally, we could just pick all the nodes or pick all the places that are going to drop profession reagents and just tune it and know, okay, we know how many times you can do this based on the repop rate, and it's a much easier tuning knob to turn. With world quests, it's completely different because the content is integrated out into the world, and we only have a limited number of world quests set up in each zone, right, that can drop certain things. And we can't just say, let's make that world quest show up 5 times more often, because that completely destroys the concept of the world quest system, which is that it should feel random. It should feel that every time you do it, you get something fresh and something different. So I think what you're seeing there is a tuning value that we still have to, that's part of the whole concept of beta. But it is different, than what we've had before and what players have been used to. But I think that's something that we knew going in was going to happen. But I think it just means we have a little bit more tuning to do before it gets to a place that feels right.
Cool. We had a few questions about crafted gear. With the crafted equip limit removed in Legion, will crafted gear be weaker, something that you just use to prepare for the first tier only, or there are intents to keep crafting relevant after the first tier? And we also noticed that on the beta, jewel crafters have special stat gems, but not as many other professions have combat perks like that. Is that intended or just the beta in progress?
A lot of that is beta in progress, specifically. But in regards to the gear still feeling relevant, that's more of a philosophy question that we ask almost every single expansion, right? Because you butt up against that place where there can be one profession item that's so good, everyone wants it, and it's the only item. And then you can go the complete opposite way where it's like, why am I wasting all my time and I'm never going to get anything that's very good, right? And we've hit that every expansion. We've tried random stats. We've tried creating new tiers of items. We've tried taking raid reagents and letting you buy, recipes that'll let you make great items. So I think where we are here is we need to figure out what is that sweet spot that fits for this expansion when you take into account things like legendaries, in the entire legendary system, how many legendaries can be equipped at a time. Then you have artifacts, right? And artifact power and unlocking all the different abilities that come with that. So I think we're kind of facing a little bit of a different tuning progression than we've ever had to deal with before, at least in regards specifically to professions and how long those items will be relevant for. But I mean, in essence, the end goal there is that we want them to be relevant for as long as possible without breaking another part of the game. I mean, that's our general philosophy on that. If you put the time in, we want you to be able to make great stuff, but having a legendary drop needs to still feel awesome, right?
Yeah.
As far as world quests, how do you intend to keep them engaging over time, and how to ensure people pace themselves correctly? And also, what is the inspiration of world quests and the inspiration to scale the rewards with this player's scale item level currently?
Yep. Awesome question. We've invested a massive amount of time in world quests across the whole team, from level design and building spaces that felt like they would be fun for world quests, to the item guides, to just all the way across the board. And the key on that is really about the technology behind how we set up the randomness for the world quests. And so we developed a whole new set of technology specifically to use with world quests. We call it a scheduler internally, but what it lets us do is make sure that we're not just saying, okay, in this bucket of 20 world quests for Val'Sharah, that we just randomly every 3 days we pick one, and that would be like base tech. But what we wanted to do is say, if we had picked this one, let's put this one now at like a distributed random. So we would say, okay, let's not pick that one again for as long as we can possibly wait, to not have to pick it. If you're in a group with people, we might pick the same one. If it has to pop because of a quest, then we'll do it. But the idea is to distribute that in separate buckets as much as we can, so that really the goal would be you could go like 2 or 3 months and never see the same world quest. We've built hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of world quests across the game for professions, battle pets, PvP, world bosses, you name it. But if all of those things just show up to you and you see the same one in a period of like a week, you're instantly going to be like, well, these are just like daily quests. Like, what? I don't understand what the difference is. So it's a big goal on our side that when you open up the map and you look at Val'Sharah, you're seeing a different place to go, and you're hopefully seeing a place to go that you weren't sent on a quest line. And then when you go there, maybe you'll find a vignette, maybe you'll find a treasure, maybe there'll be a battle pet thing there that you didn't know about. And a lot of that is just harkening back to what we all like with original WoW, where it was exploration. There's so much more exploration to find stuff. World quests will show up on your map, so we can send you to that area, but the hope is when you get to that area, maybe you'll look around and you'll find different stuff, whereas vignettes are more of like a discovery mechanic. You see a star on the map and you're like, oh, I'm going to go over there and do this individual thing. So, it's a key element to Legion feeling like it has a long end game, is that concept of world quest scaling with your item level, scaling rewards, scaling number of players, solo, 3-player, 5-player, world boss. So we really want to touch all the different type of players we could have through that content.
Okay,
Cool.
Final question?
So we wanted to just talk about the legendary and artifact weapons a little bit. Were there any lessons learned from the legendary ring quest line, and did that impact design decisions for the artifact progression? And artifacts have both hidden appearances and hidden effects that vary greatly. What was the need to add more hidden effects on top of an artifact that already has so many traits?
The ring, we learned a ton from the ring progression. I don't know if we could say that the timeline that played out, because it was so much based upon the patch cycle,
right,
and when we could add new content to that and what we were doing. For artifacts, I think above all, it was what could we do to make each individual spec fulfill the fantasy of the class. Was by far the number one most important thing, right? If you were a hunter and you were using this bow, what is the fantasy behind that? Obviously, there's all the mechanics of the system side about how much artifact power does it take to unlock each individual piece, unlock the upgrade on those pieces. I'm sure you guys know about artifact knowledge.
Yeah.
A catch-up system,
Paragons,
so if you
yeah.
pick a different spec, that you can level that one up a little bit quicker. So there are lessons there, but I think we have tried to really attack that system in a different way than we have before, by really trying to focus on the fantasy behind each individual class. And I think that's why you're seeing the different the models. So like if you pick Ashbringer, obviously I think a lot of people think Ashbringer is really cool, But an unholy Ashbringer might, like someone might, they're really into Forsaken and they think that's like the coolest thing. But then we offer 7 colors, you know, in that also, so you can pick different colors for it. So you're kind of seeing not just item progression of like how strong is my artifact, but you're also getting a lot of that transmog kind of vibe into it as well, where you can customize, and that lasts for a long time, right? And we can add to that system. So it's not like what we ship with today would necessarily be what we have by the time we're at the end of the patch cycle, right? So, I mean, overall, it's just, I think us looking from that perspective of what fulfills the fantasy of each class, and isn't that such a huge part of Legion? With your class order hall, having it be public, so you're always surrounded with other people from your class, and I think a ton of that goes into the system design side of it, just as much as what the individual abilities are worth.